All right, we are going to start in a few minutes. We are opening it up a little bit early so that people can join, and we'll start right at 8 o'clock, Lord willing. I see some people have joined us. If you want to comment your name on the side there, I'll know who you are because I can't see who you are from my screen. I can just tell how many of you there are. We'll be starting here in about a minute. So we'll start a Bible study in about a minute. Just trying to get everybody a chance to come. Welcome, Albertsons. It's good to see you here. If any of the rest of you want to comment, so I know who you are, I'll say hi to you. Hello, Sister Di. Ah, welcome, Joan. All right. Well, it is 8 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started punctually. Got a few comments to make at the beginning, but let's pray actually before begin with my comments. Dear Lord, we thank you for today. We do thank you for all of your blessings to us. We ask, Lord, you be with this Bible study. Help me to be able to speak clearly and communicate your word. Help each one that's watching to hear something from you through this Bible study. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Well, if you were here last week and you're back, thank you very much for returning. I appreciate you coming back. And this is your first time. Welcome. That's good to have you here. I see Tony is here, and I see my son is here. Sister Phelps, welcome to all of you. And as I said earlier, I can't see who is here from my screen. All it tells me is how many. But it's good to have you all with me today. Now, I will mention to do this actually on my Allegheny Apologist page, I need 100 followers and to have been on Facebook for 60 days. And I'm really amazed we hit 100 followers this week, and that is truly amazing. Thank you to all who did that. But I still have to wait for the 60 days, so we'll be doing this for I'll be still be doing this for on my own page for a while, and I was just told I need to change a setting. Let me see if I can do that here quickly. And I apologize. I'm not. Okay. I will just have to leave this at friends only for this one because I think I made it public last week and I don't remember where I did that. And I'm not finding that option here quickly. As you can tell, I'm still learning this whole technology. It's the second time I've done a live like this. And so I do apologize. I'm trying to improve, and I did get some feedback last week. Thank you for that. And I will try to continue to improve and make this a better experience for all of us. Thank you for sticking with me while I am learning. Um, Feel free to make comments during the Bible study. I love discussion, as some of you know, and it's a little different this way. But if you want to make a comment, please do, and I will try to respond to it. Now, I don't promise to have answers to questions or a good response to every comment, but I will try. I'll do my best. And if you're watching this later, feel free to comment as well so that I know that you did watch it, because, again, I won't know if you watched it unless you leave a comment of some kind. Before I begin, I do need to make a disclaimer that neither my employer nor my church is responsible for anything I say. I am on my own. So we're going to be looking at the first chapter of Amos tonight. Chapters 1 and 2 of Amos are prophecies against a variety of nations around Israel. And we're going to try to go through this fairly quickly because it's kind of background, and but there are some interesting things that I'm going to try to bring out, but I'm not going to try to cover every detail. And my goal, Lord willing, is to cover the first chapter of Amos tonight. We did verses 1 and 2 last week with a lot of emphasis on the earthquake, because Amos proclaims in verse 1 that his prophecy is 2 years before the earthquake. And we talked about that earthquake quite a bit last week. And that's going to color the way I look at these prophecies. So let's begin. Verse 3. So we're in Amos chapter 1, verse 3. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Damascus, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have threshed Gilead with threshing instruments of iron. I want to start with mentioning about this for 3, yea, for 4. And as many of you probably know, Hebrew poetry is built around parallelism. They don't do a lot with rhyme or rhythm, but they do a lot with parallelism. And this is a Hebrew way of getting parallelism in. So this is kind of poetic by doing this 3, that yea, 4. And a lot of the commentators say that the idea is kind of 3 means they're already filled up, like they have filled up their portion of sin and ready for judgment. And then the 4 is like, this is over the top. So God is saying that they've had 3 transgressions, judgment should come. Yeah, actually they did 4. It's an overwhelming amount of judgment. That doesn't mean that he enumerates 3 or 4. It's not quite that straightforward. It's just a literary device, basically saying their judgment, their sin has filled up, and it is time for judgment. In this one, he's talking about the transgressions of Damascus. Damascus, of course, is the capital of Syria. So this is a literary technique called synecdoche, where the capital or a part of something stands for the whole thing. And in this case, the capital stands for the whole country. And the transgression, which God says he will not turn away the punishment because of, is that they threshed Gilead with threshing instruments of iron. And I found this interesting in looking at what it means to thresh. I found this from a Cambridge commentary. They said a threshing, a threshing machine or a threshing tool would be about 7 foot by 3 foot, couple of pieces of wood pulled together, and then underneath that would be sharp pieces of hard stone or basalt, which were very common in the area. So you've got 2 pieces of wood. Underneath, you've got these rocks embedded in it. And then the driver actually stands on top of it. So he's using his weight to drive it down onto the ground. And then there would be oxen pulling it. and pulling it over the grain. And when it does that, it not only shells the grain, but it actually turns the straw into chaff, excuse me. And so it's pulverizing the grain. And so the idea of threshing is that it's pulverizing, it's absolutely destroying, it's total destruction. And we have a record actually in 2 Kings 13:7 that the king of Syria destroyed Israel and made them like the dust by threshing. So here, Amos seems to be referring back to this idea, or God through Amos is referring back to this, that Syria threshed Israel, and the God's judgment is going to come on Syria because of that total destruction, that violence that they exerted. Verse 4, I will send a fire into the house of Ahaziel, who shall devour the palaces, which shall devour the palaces of Ben-Hadad. Um, and I found this in a commentary. I hope I'm correct because it's hilarious. Ben-Hadad is the son of Hazael, who had killed Ben-Hadad, the previous king. So I'm not sure quite why you would name your son after the king you dethroned. But anyway, um, God says he's going to set fire to the house of Hazael. He's going to devour the palaces of Ben-Hadad. Again, you hear that parallelism. Hazael and Ben-Hadad are two names for the kings, the various kings of Syria. And he says he's going to send fire into the houses and he's going to destroy the palaces. Many commentators assume that this fire is the result of warfare, and they just simply assume that this is a destruction, probably by Assyria, moving in. However, in the context that this is 2 years before the earthquake, these fires may actually be the result of earthquakes, as opposed to being the result of warfare. And can't speak definitively on that because the Bible doesn't make it that obvious. And in fact, some people might even read the fire as metaphorical rather than literal. But I'm going to take it at face value at this point, especially because the fire is devouring the palaces. And one of the things that we mentioned last week about Israel is Israel's going through a time of prosperity. And so a lot of the destruction seems to be focused on material things. May not be true here with Syria, but just to mention that. But the houses and the palaces are going to be destroyed, whether that be through warfare or through earthquake. They are going to be burned up. And then going on to verse 5, I will break also the bar of Damascus and cut off the inhabitant from the plain of Avon, and him that holdeth the scepter from the house of Eden. And the people of Syria shall go into captivity unto Kir, saith the Lord. So a broken bar would be the bar that's holding the gates closed of Damascus. Again, capital city of Syria. And the bar is going to be, the bar being broken means the gates of the city are being opened, which would make it susceptible to invasion. And again, this could be the result of an earthquake, could easily destroy the bars of the gates, or it could be an invading army that's breaking through the gates and the bar is being broken. And certainly the idea of going into captivity does imply that there is an enemy army involved at this point. Some of the place names seem to be very controversial. It's hard to pin down exactly where some things are, so we're not going to focus on that, except that Kir probably is Assyria, because that is in fact who captured Syria and destroyed it and took it out of its homeland, etc. So if you have any comments relating to Damascus and Syria, feel free to make them. If otherwise, we're going to move on to the next country. So God first says that Syria has reached its full limit of sin. Its judgment is coming because of its destruction of Israel, and he's going to send fire to destroy it. He then moves on to Gaza. Verse 6, thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Gaza, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they carried away captive the whole captivity to deliver them up to Edom. But I will send a fire, this is verse 7, but I will send a fire on the wall of Gaza, which shall devour the palaces thereof. Gaza is the southernmost city of Philistia, so we have moved from Syria to Philistia, and again, you have that 3-4 poetic parallelism. But the sin here is interesting. He says they carried away captive the whole captivity. And exactly what that means is, again, discussed by the commentators. There's a suggestion that this is because they captured them by deception rather than outright warfare, so that it was um, treachery rather than fair fighting, and they captured Israelites through some sort of intrigue. Or it could mean whole captivity could mean that they captured people left, right, and center, old, young, male, female. They didn't care. They just captured everyone. So it's not, we're not completely clear what a whole captivity means, but that's the implication, something along those lines. Um, and then they delivered them up to Edom. And this is kind of interesting. This is going to come back multiple times, this issue of Edom. Um, and it seems like there was a real problem with um, the Edomites taking Israel into captivity. We'll touch on this more when we get actually to Edom, because Edom should not have been Israel's enemy, but they were. Um, so moving. Oh, and again, there's this issue of fire, and so there's this issue of fire again. Whether this is earthquake or war or a combination of the two is unclear here. It is interesting that Gaza was very strong and was the least likely of the Israelite of the Philistine cities to be captured. So Gaza being destroyed is actually rather significant. Um, but the rest of them are not left out. Verse 8, I will cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod, and him that holdeth the scepter from Ashkelon, and I will turn mine hand against Ekron, and the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, saith the Lord God. So these are the other major cities of Philistia, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Ekron. The other major cities, he said, I will destroy all of them as well. So it's not just Gaza. He starts with Gaza as kind of the key city. It does seem to be the one that's often used as kind of symbolic of Philistia, but he gets all of the other cities as well. So Philistia is condemned here for its capture of Israelites and selling them into Edom. If you have any comments again on Philistia, please make them, and I will try to respond to that. Then God moves on from Syria and Philistia to Tyre, and he says in verse 9, Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Tyrus, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom and remembered not the brotherly covenant. But I will send a fire on the wall of Tyrus, which shall devour the palaces thereof. So Tyre, of course, is north of Israel. I should have mentioned Syria is more northeast. Philistia is southwest. Tyre would be north. This is the home of Jezebel, if you remember Jezebel and Ahab. But again, they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom. So this is the same as was mentioned back with Philistia. So same issues there as before. Whatever that means, Tyre apparently was guilty of the same thing. But God adds another note: they remembered not the brotherly covenant. It seems most likely to me that this refers to the fact that Tyre, the king of Tyre, Hiram, had a very good relationship with David and with Solomon, and so there was a covenant between Tyre and the united kingdom of Israel and Judah. And Tyre, despite that friendliness, that old covenant. Now, this has been hundreds of years later, I recognize, but there was a covenant between these two countries, and Tyre has forgotten that brotherly covenant, broken that to capture Israelites and sell them to Edom. And so there's a God's judgment again is going to come on Tyre because of how they have treated Israel. Now, some people have suggested that the brotherly covenant is between Israel and Edom, and we'll talk about that in just a moment because we're going to talk about Edom next. So it could refer to the brotherly covenant that should have existed between Israel and Edom. But my personal preference would be that it's referring to David and Solomon. But again, it's not completely clear. Again, fire upon the wall and upon the palaces. And again, earthquake or war, either one could be bringing the fire of judgment, but God is sending a fire of judgment upon um, Tyre also. If you have any comments, I keep saying it, and I will keep saying it. I'm not pausing as long as I did in class because it's a little more awkward to pause when I'm just looking at a screen and not at you all. But if you have any comments, you may please mention them. We do come now to Edom, and God says, "For thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever." Um, Now, you may remember, Edom is relative to Israel. Um, Edom are the descendants of Esau, Isaac's brother. So Edom would be, let's see, Jacob's uncle, and so the descendants would be cousins. So the nation of Edom was a cousinly nation to the people of Israel. Literal DNA, biologically, they were related. Not real close, of course, by the time you get down to this point in history, but their origin is, they were cousins. And as such, God expected Israel to treat them that way. When they come out of the land of Egypt, they are not permitted to attack Edom. They are not allowed to go through Edom without Edom's permission, which they didn't get. And so God requires Israel to treat Edom as their relative, but Edom did not return the favor. One commentator said Edom nursed Esau's grudge. Esau, of course, did not have good relations with excuse me, thank you. I just got corrected. Jacob and Esau were brothers. Thank you. Yes, it was something wasn't registering in my brain. Thank you. Um, Jacob and Esau were not on the best of terms throughout much of their lives, and so yes, thank you. So the nations were in fact cousins. Jacob and Esau were brothers, um, and so uh, you have this animosity that was exhibited even almost from the womb between Jacob and Esau, and it continues with their nations. And that's described here as he always pursued his brother with the sword and did not have any pity. He had anger perpetually. And so there's this long-standing animosity which Esau, Edom, the descendants of Esau, have exhibited towards the nation of Israel and Judah as well. Here the focus is on the northern tribe because that's where Amos is prophesying, but it would apply to Judah as well. And when they were united, during the time they were united. So Edom is a long-standing enemy, and yet he should have been friendly with Israel, with the nation of Israel. And so God says he's going to send judgment on Edom because Edom has violated these family connections and has been an enemy and warred against Israel. And in fact, he says again, I will send fire upon Teman, which shall devour the palaces of Bozrah. And again, get 2 different names here of some parts of Edom. The details of where these places are seems to be a little cloudy, and I didn't want to get into that. So I didn't need to focus on those details. But that Edom is going to be destroyed again by fire, destroying the palaces. This is definitely a theme: fire destroying the palaces, the houses, the walls. This is a theme of what God's judgment is going to be. And again, this could either be earthquake or it could be war, or a combination of the two. Many times prophecies had multiple fulfillments. And so God may have been talking about the earthquake that's coming in 2 years, or the eventual destruction of these nations as they were destroyed by Assyria and Babylon over the next many years. Okay, any thoughts or comments on those? And we're going to move on to Ammon. So, in relation to Ammon, thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they ripped up the women with child of Gilead, that they might enlarge their border. Ammon was a relative also of Israel, or Jacob. Israel, of course, being Jacob's name after he wrestles with the angel. So the children of Israel are literally the children of Jacob. And Ammon was Lot's younger daughter's son. So if I got this right, I figured out that would make Ammon Israel's second cousin once removed. I'm not positive of that, but they're cousins. So Jacob and Ammon were actually cousins. There was a relation there. Um, and again, this was a nation that God told Israel not to attack. When they came through, they did not treat Ammon as they did the pagan nations. They tried to be friendly with Ammon, although Ammon was not very friendly back. Um, and Israel was not permitted to have any of the land of Ammon. Now, Ammon had defeated the Emim and the Zamzumims, which I partly am including because I love the name Zamzumim, and partly because the Emims and the Zamzumims were, in fact, giants who had lived in the land prior to the time that Ammon arrived. But you have a pattern of behavior, and I have it listed here as systematic land grabbing. The verse 13 says that they were trying to um, enlarge their border. And um, if you go back, the Ammonites were with Eglon. If you remember your judges, Eglon is the very fat king that Ehud, the left-handed judge, stabs in the summer house and then escapes, and he leaves his sword behind. If you remember that whole account, um, Eglon was allied with Ammon. Jephthah, the judge who made the rash vow about whoever came first out of his house, um, that incident was because Ammon was causing trouble because Ammon was claiming territory that belonged to Israel. Um, Ammon was also the king of Ammon. Nahash is the one who attacked Gilead and offered Gilead peace if they would put out every man's right eye. And the Gileadites appealed to Saul, who had been anointed king but had rejected it because he was afraid. And at this point, he's kind of king, but not really king. And the Ammonites trying to take over Gilead um, under King Nahash caused Saul to actually rise up and become a good king briefly and respond. David actually had a decent relation with Ammon with one of the kings, but when that king died, the son took over. David sends a delegation to him in friendship. The king of Ammon, humiliates David's emissaries, and so David sends Joab then to attack and fight with Ammon. So Ammon has a long history of battle with Israel and trying to take Israeli territory, and there's been a lot of conflict over time, and that's what God says, that they've been trying to enlarge their border, trying to destroy the children, which may imply that he was trying to eliminate the heirs, which of course Satan was always trying to destroy the Israelites via whatever nation was available. Ammon seems to have made itself available. Um, and God says, I will kindle a fire in the wall of Rabbah, and it shall devour the palaces thereof, with shouting in the day of battle, with a tempest in the day of the whirlwind. And it's interesting, he says, I'm going to kindle a fire rather than send a fire. And at least one commentator pointed that out, the distinction that kindle a fire implies the fire is coming from within the city rather than sending the fire from outside the city. And I don't know what the significance is precisely, but that is there. And again, whether this fire is a result of a natural disaster or of warfare, you actually get implications of both here, because, well, of natural disaster and of war, because shouting in the day of battle, but a whirlwind sounds more like a natural disaster. So perhaps Ammon's being destroyed here by a combination of the two, though verse 15 does say that the king will go into captivity. So there's certainly warfare going on and captivity being prophesied as judgment on the land of Ammon. Um, and again, there's the destruction of the palaces, but there is this capture, and it's an interesting the discussion again among the commentators. It says, their king will go into captivity, he and his princes together, saith the Lord. Now, on face value, it would make most sense that this is actually the ruler of the nation and his cabinet, his major advisors, his princes, whatever, the lords of the country. But some of the commentators suggested that the king here is referring to Moloch, the god of the Ammonites, and his princes are the priests, so that it's not about the nation, but about the religion. That God is bringing judgment on the God of the Ammonites, the idol of the Ammonites, and that the God himself will be taken into captivity. The idol and his entire religious order, this priest, will be taken into captivity. I don't know how strong that argument is, but that was presented by a number of the commentators. But again, God is bringing judgment on Ammon because of the way it has mistreated Israel over years and years and years. And that actually ends the first chapter. We're a couple minutes early, but let me clarify. So we've got a number of nations, and they're some of the commentators make a statement that you're moving from farther away to closer. Don't think that's quite accurate. But there is somewhat of that movement from Syria, which was further away, Philistines, which were close by, and then to actually relative nations, Esau and Ammon, and we're going to be dealing with more in chapter 2. In chapter 2, we're going to deal with a couple more foreign nations, and then Judah and Israel. But we're going to continue this. There are for 3, yea, for 4 judgments on the various nations surrounding Israel, and then, as I said, Judah and Israel. Okay, so are there any thoughts or comments before I sign off for tonight? Next week we will pick up with chapter 2, Lord willing, same time, same place, chapter 2, and go through the other nations that God mentions. And depending on how that time goes, we might even start into chapter 3 with God's extensive prophecy against the nation of Israel. Well, thank you again for coming. I appreciate all of you who took time on a Saturday night to come and listen to this Bible study. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you have a good weekend, rest of your weekend. Enjoy your time in church tomorrow and have a good week. And we'll see you next Saturday night.